Hello, welcome to Microfiche Microphone. I'm Micah, and on this channel we look at microfiche from the past, old newspaper articles in the public domain. We look at them with our modern eyes, our modern perspective, and see what we can learn from them. On this microfiche time capsule, we are looking back at the improvement era from April 1932. And this article is entitled Greatness in Men, George Franklin Richards, by Bryant S. Hinckley, President of Liberty Stake. So this is obviously a series we are looking at. Anyways, so George F. Richards, what do I know about him? I would say, I think he's related to the other Richardses. Like, for example, Willard Richards, Franklin D. Richards, and LeGrand Richards. And I believe Willard Richards, if I'm not mistaken, I may be corrected by this article, so let me just check. If I'm not mistaken, his grandfather was Willard Richards, his father was Franklin D. Richards, and his son was LeGrand Richards. Now, I'm not sure if that was all in one line. It could have been like his nephew, for example, was LeGrand Richards, but we will find out. But he's definitely of a different generation. Anyways, but as for he himself, I don't know that much about this person. Yeah, so let's find out. Yes? All I know is that he was an apostle, which, duh, like everyone was so far that we've read in the last little while. Anyways, so George Franklin Richards. All right, so first of all, there's a picture of him. So there's him. He looks like a intelligent person. I don't know, it's just first impression, maybe it's the glasses, well, let's find out. George Franklin Richards' life has no failures, no dark shadows, no trace of faltering in the face of difficulties, no equivocating when there was a choice to be made between right and expediency, no yielding to insidious influences, however tempting, no deviating from the path of rectitude, no deserting of ideals. His life is marked by a constant, safe, and steady marching forward. He has always stood on the side of right and justice, radiating hope, inspiring confidence, building up faith, and shedding abroad the genial rays of love. Such a life is indeed a victorious one, though it be neither spectacular nor highly colorful. Well, I mean, that's quite high praise. I mean, if that's true, then he is a very decisive person who doesn't seem to be easily swayed. Yeah? And that he has made his decisions to do his best to do what's right and isn't like swayed by one side or the other. That's what it sounds like to me. Obviously, if that's true. Oh, and I also realized I forgot to read the beginning, like, quote thing. David, the sweet singer of Israel, wrote a note appropriate for use here. Blessed is every one that feareth the Lord, that walketh in his ways. Thy wife shall be as a fruitful vine, and by the sides of thine house. Thy children like olive plants round about thy table. Behold, that thus shall the man be blessed that feareth the Lord. Okay, sure. That's a little random, but okay. I do understand what they're trying to say is that he was a good person, but that maybe he doesn't have as many interesting things, but at least he's prosperous because he's a good person. Like that's what I'm getting. That's what I'm getting from this, but we'll find out. Obviously, I'm also going to do some fact checking at the end because you never know how biased an article is. Anyway. George F. Richards is the son of the soil, born in Farmington, Davis County, Utah, February 23, 1861. His father, Franklin Dewey Richards, Franklin D. Richards, as I mentioned, president of the Quorum of the 12 Apostles and church historian, was a man of learning and initiative. His mother, a woman of refinement and superior intelligence, came with her parents from England to Nauvoo when she was 11 years of age. Their son inherits his mellowness and sweetness of disposition from both sides. Well, that's kind of sweet, that he had, like laid-back parents who weren't too, like, passionate people, I guess, like, kind of mellow, is what they said, mellowness and sweetness of disposition. He attended the schools of his native town in 1881 and graduated from the University of Deseret, University of Utah, having passed successfully the course prescribed in English language and literature. Okay? Soon after his graduation, he was employed as a clerk in the office of the Utah Central Railroad. That's such a random, like, choice of like, profession after you've studied English. You know, like, you would think that he'd work in a printing office or, you know, for the Deseret News or, you know, like that. I don't know. It just seems a little strange to me. He subsequently left the railroad company against their desires to engage in farming. Another random one, okay? Which occupation he followed principally until he was called to the apostleship. In addition to farming and stock raising, he engaged in the lumber and hardware business in Tooele. He was successful in all he undertook. That's very vague. From his boyhood, he was active in the church, as this brief record indicates. He was set apart and has served consecutively as elder, 70, high priest, and patriarch. Patriarch, huh? For 16 years, he was counselor in the presidency of the Tooele Stake of Zion. It's the patriarch that's a little unusual, yeah? Because of the other ones were pretty common at the time. All right, let's look at some pictures. So, above. Franklin Dewey Richards and Nancy Longstroth Richards, parents of George Franklin Richards. Interesting. Lower, George F. Richards and his wife find many pleasant hours on the golf links. Golf, huh? That's the second time it's come up. They also talked about golf with regards to Charles W. Nibley, yeah? Who, as you may know, had a golf course named after him, which he donated to the city of Salt Lake because he wanted everyone to be able to play golf. It's not free, but it is public, and you don't have to be a member to play on it. In April 1906, he became a member of the Council of the 12 Apostles. From 1916 to 1919, he presided over the European mission. This was during the most turbulent days of the Great World War. Conscriptions were so drastic that men were not available. Consequently, women did largely the work of the church. Well, that's kind of cool. That's very innovative of him. That's not a solution that other people have really come up with, so I like it. At one time, nearly 300 women were doing such work. Well, good for them. Today, there's a lot more. For 11 years, he has been president of the Salt Lake Temple. Thus, all of his life, the welfare of the church has been his major concern. George F. Richards has been prominent in civil affairs, serving as county treasurer of Tooele County, a chairman of the school board, and a member of the state legislature. He is a man of lofty ideals, but wise and prudent, always employing safe and practical methods to achieve his ends. Early in life, he learned the meaning of hard work and felt the weight of responsibility. At an age when most boys are in high school, he was doing a man's work. Referring to this, he said, "Early in the spring of 1876, my older brother went on a mission to England and left me a yoke of oxen, a canyon cart, and chains. With these, although I was but 15 years of age in his absence, I hauled wood from the Farmington Canyon and traded it at the grist mill for grist stuff, to the molasses mill for molasses, and in this way provided for the family. With cordwood, I paid a mason for laying up a stone wall 4 1/2 feet high on the south side of our lot. This was laid up with lime mortar. I hauled the lime, the rock, and the sand with the yoke of oxen. We put an addition of 2 rooms on our house, the walls of which were built of adobe. I hauled all the material, tended the mason, and assisted with the work. The family used wood exclusively for fuel. I hauled the wood from the canyon and cut it into stove lengths for burning. I engaged in all the ordinary sports of my day, playing marbles and baseball. Many a day I started for the canyon an hour or more before the stars quit shining, in order to get my load of wood and be home for a 4 o'clock ball game." That's a hard worker, yeah? That's a pretty hard worker. He was married to Alice Elmira Robinson, March 9th, 1882. For 50 years they have walked hand in hand through sunshine and shadow, and have faced the perplexities and vicissitudes of life without fear, and with a settled and a conquering faith. They have made a home and reared a family that challenges the admiration of all who know them, and of all who understand the fundamentals of life. Alice Elmira Robinson is a brave and beautiful woman with a sweet and radiant spirit, the mother of 15 children. Gosh, they've been busy. 10 daughters and 5 sons. 13 of these children are living. That's impressive. All of the boys have been on missions, and the girls have all been married in the temple. That's amazing. This song of the poet finds glorious fulfillment in her life. The bravest battle that ever was fought, shall I tell you where and when? On the maps of the world you will find it not. 'Twas fought by the mothers of men. O ye with banners and battles shot, and soldiers to shout and praise, I tell you the kingliest victories fought were fought in those silent ways. All right, and let's look at some more pictures. This top one is George F. Richards and his 5 sons. I'm going to split this up so it's a little easier to see on the screen, and I will circle George F. Richards or point to him or something or indicate him anyway, because it's not so obvious from the picture itself, but he's kind of in the middle-ish. But there's the picture similar to the first one we looked at, so I'm pretty sure that's him. His sons don't look that much like him because he has kind of a short face, yeah? Like, it's not very long. I guess there's, one that has the shorter face from him, but most of them have long faces, which makes me think that they all inherited it from their mother. That's kind of impressive. And then here's another picture, Alice R. Richards surrounded by her 8 daughters. Gosh, like that's just so much. Like, look at all those children, and wow. Like, I can't even imagine having that many kids. I have 2, and that's enough for me. Gosh. These parents believe in the fireside, in the laughter of little children, in the gospel that builds happy, peaceful homes where the purest longings of the heart are best satisfied. They have carried this doctrine to a beautiful fruition. Home Sweet Home finds response in every heart that has been touched with the comforting influence of a real home. That is the kind they have made. One never becomes acquainted with a family like this without being impressed with its fundamental value. To maintain the integrity of the home is the primary concern of the Church and of the state. No people can rise higher than the level of its family life. What this country is going to amount to in the end depends upon what happens to its homes. If the family decays, there is no magic by which you can save the Church. That is a really random tangent to go on. Bryant, Hinckley, I understand that you have your own opinions, but this is not the place to put them. I don't know. It's a little strange. Home building is a fine art, the work of master craftsmen. The parents who create at the fireside the atmosphere in which strong men and noble women grow have created something finer than ever found in expression in marble or bronze. Okay. The sublime creation of the artists, which glorify the ages and immortalize the race, are not comparable to the molding of the eternal soul of man. To create a home where the souls of children are touched with the expanding power of a radiant faith, where the filters into their hearts the assurances that really great things can be accomplished if one goes steadfastly forward, where they hear in daily prayer and conversation, trust in the Lord and do good. So shalt thou dwell in the land, and verily thou shalt be fed, is a supreme achievement. George, okay, he's going off on his own tangent, so it's kind of like, bring it back to base here. George F. Richards and his wife have come as near doing this as any 2 people we know. Their sons are honorable men of faith, devotion, and shining integrity. Their daughters are noble women, kind, lovable, intelligent, and true as steel. This is a blue ribbon family. These parents have made a real contribution to this republic. Blue ribbon, huh? I didn't know it was a competition. I guess I should have, entered the competition or something. I don't know. It's weird. Let us remember that boys and girls do not grow to the estate of noble manhood and womanhood just by chance. These parents have led the way and set the example. Their leadership is not of the driving kind. Honesty, industry, affection, and faith are enshrined in this home. These are the virtues that underlie all sound living, that purify, elevate, and enrich this mortal life, and make the world secure and happy. Following the death of the late beloved Anton H. Lund, George F. Richards was made president of the Salt Lake Temple. It was a wise and happy choice. The tranquility of his mind and the serenity of his spirit are in harmony with the sanctity of the place over which he presides. He was set apart to this office by President Heber J. Grant on March 14, 1921, and immediately assumed the responsibilities of the office. For 11 years, he has administered the affairs of that institution with gratifying results. During his presidency, the work has gone steadily forward. The capacity of continued on page 342. Before we go on, I feel like they didn't mention very much what he did with his life before he was an apostle, and I feel like they haven't talked much since what he did since, except that he presided over the European mission. Yeah, and I guess president of the Salt Lake Temple. It does sound like he's a very calm person. He has like a calm presence. I have known a few people like that, and yeah, they're really nice to be around. Okay, 342. I haven't gotten much into it, so I'm hoping that we can have some more. There's a little tiny picture, and I don't think it's relevant to this. Oh gosh. Okay, let's keep going. The temple has been enlarged and the number of workers greatly increased until today the ordinances performed are many times greater than they were 10 years ago. President Richards has gathered about him a corps of the most devoted and efficient workers, and has, with his usual care and intelligence, organized the administrative side of the work, and carries it out with quiet but business-like efficiency. All of this has contributed in a marked degree to the increasing interest and popularity of the sacred but significant service to which this institution is dedicated. Vicarious work for the dead is a distinct feature of the religion of the Latter-day Saints. No other church or people understand it. To one familiar with its far-reaching effects, it is one of the most magnanimous and soul-satisfying doctrines ever preached or practiced by the followers of any prophet or philosopher in the modern world. The plan of salvation as comprehended by Mormonism is not limited by the grave. It reaches back to the ages that have gone and forward into the eternities to come. Yeah, another paragraph out of context. Like, seriously, we know. Yeah. Not sure why it needed to be said explicitly, but okay. Moving on. Had nothing to do with George F. Richards, you know? Like Bryant S. Hinckley, calm down. You don't have to say all of your opinions in one article. Under the authorization of the church, ordinances are performed in holy temples by the living for the dead. The church maintains that on the farther side of the veil, these ordinances are made applicable to the dead as they, by faith and repentance, become prepared to receive them. In other words, these ordinances, when properly performed, are made available and effective to those in the spirit world, and they may accept or reject this work as they elect. It is purely a matter of choice. Mormonism accepts the glorious doctrine of the immortality of the soul, and affirms that when we leave this sphere, we go to a higher and a better world. Death may separate the husband and wife, parents and children. The resurrection, in its highest condition, reunites them and restores all that was lost in the grave. The restoration and continuance of family ties beyond this mortal existence can only be brought about through ordinances performed in the temple by one divinely commissioned. I almost feel like he doesn't have anything to say, so he's just rambling on about the church doctrine, you know? By official appointment from the president of the church, Sister Richards directs the work of the women of the temple. We're back to the Richards, thank you. She is, by nature and experience, eminently suited to this work. She fits admirably into the situation and thus shares the joy and honor which have come to her worthy husband in directing the work of the greatest temple built in this dispensation. That's debatable. Also, however, I appreciate that they finally came back to the Richards. I feel like Bryant S. Hinckley, that he was slightly leaning on the side of explaining more on the assumption that people might read this who don't know about the temple, I guess. I guess that's what he was doing. I don't know, but I almost feel like he's just filling. He's like filling in things in the article because he didn't know what to say, which I think is a little too bad because I'm sure there are other things to say about this person. Like, we haven't gone that deep into it. I don't know. Like, for example, he studied English. What were his favorite books? You know? I'm sure he has a few. Like, dude, just, you know, talk about this person and stop talking about the church doctrine, you know? I don't know. George F. Richards is a deeply religious, self-disciplined man, observing in detail and with fidelity what he regards as his religious obligations. But he is very far from being a grim and dour Puritan which cannot smile. On the contrary, he is a pleasant and happy man who has the sane and discriminating mind and knows that every religious conviction must be tested by its effect upon one's conduct. One's moral duties and responsibilities towards his neighbors, his vocation, and his family he regards as inseparable from hhis religion. It is true he sets up lofty requirements for church membership. He sets it... No, he doesn't. like the church was already set up before he came into it. You know what I mean? Gosh. that he sets up lofty requirements for church membership, but he is loyal in his observance of these requirements. He uses persuasively and wisely the influence of his great office and the power of his personality to get others to do the same. Both the motives and the means he employs to accomplish his purpose are the most unselfish. Interesting way of saying that, huh? In his discourses is reflected a clear and deep understanding of the great fundamentals of the gospel and a profound love for humanity. His loyalty to the truth and his devotion to the right, as he understands it, are unsurpassed. All his life he has sought the establishment, the maintenance of the principles taught by the Master, believes sincerely that obedience to these principles is the way to enduring happiness and permanent peace. This is the motive and inspiration behind his endeavors. It is gratifying to know that during his busy and serious life he has never permitted the spirit of play to die in his heart. You may, on an early summer morning, see on the municipal golf course a gallant, kindly-looking, genial man, rather compactly built and neatly attired in golf togs, now 71 years of age, his wife 68, the mother of 15 children, trimly and appropriately dressed, both dignified but in carefree spirit, playing golf with some of their children. Brother and Sister Richards have just celebrated their golden wedding. These are indeed their golden days. He is considerate and chivalrous toward his bride of 50 years as the day when first he won her hand. The romance of their early love is sweetened and sanctified by 50 years. So that means that they married when he was 21 and she was 18. That's okay. That's not a huge age gap. I kind of like it. Because he's 71 now and she's 68, yeah. And if they just celebrated their golden anniversary, it's 50 years. That's impressive, you know? That's impressive for any couple to stay together that long. So, awesome. It probably helps that he's so laid back and calm, yeah? There is something deeply satisfying and appealingly beautiful about the lives of this kind. Isn't it a delightful thing to see people who have uncomplainingly done their share of the world's work and carried courageously their full weight of life's responsibilities, grow gracefully old together, and to walk hand in hand toward the setting sun, as they journey, hear the laughter of grandchildren, and feel with Browning that the best is yet to be? Youth is not altogether a time of life, it is a state of mind. People grow old by deserting their ideals. We are as young as our faith, as old as our despairs. The crowning work of George F. Richards' life, and that of his noble wife, is the work which they are now doing in the temple. This is a glorious climax to their splendid careers. George F. Richards has a sweet, strong, delightfully poised, and inwardly triumphant personality, typical of the best there is in Mormonism. That's the end. Okay. I wasn't sure. It wasn't 100% clear. I feel like Bryant S. Hinckley doesn't know him very well, and that he was a little bit like filling in with some church doctrine and stuff. It sounds to me like he's a naturally calm person, and that kind of freaks out the author because he doesn't seem to know how to describe him other than that he's calm, and he's a chill dude. Dude, you can be chill without being boring, and it's like he doesn't know how to portray that. It's so funny to me. Okay, let's take a look at the Wikipedia article. Once again, I reiterate, I am looking at the Wikipedia article just as a second source. And because this is a YouTube video and I'm not writing a book, I don't consider that anything wrong with using Wikipedia as a source. So it's not too long. I think we could read this. All right, let's take a look. Oh yeah, he was acting Presiding Patriarch. I wonder how that came about. Of course, it was after this article was written, so I understand why he wasn't specifically mentioned here. Well, he lived a nice long life, didn't he? That's impressive. 89? Yeah? Cool. Okay. George Franklin Richards, February 23rd, 1861 to August 8th, 1950, was a member of the Quorum of the 12 Apostles of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, LDS Church, from April 9, 1906 until his death. He served as acting Presiding Patriarch of the LDS Church from 1937 to 1942 and President of the Quorum of the 12 from May 25th, 1945 until his death. Okay. President of the Quorum of the 12. So that means that if he had lived longer than George Albert Smith, he would have become president of the church. But because George Albert Smith lived a year longer than him, he wasn't. Yeah, it was David O. McKay. Interesting. Like, it's so interesting when I find out things like this. It's just, wow. Because George Albert Smith died in April of 1951. I remember he died on his birthday, April 4th. And that's why I know the dates so well. I don't know all the dates, I promise, but that one I happen to remember. But he died in August 8th, 1950, and George Albert Smith died in April 1951. So that's crazy. Okay, family. Richards was born in Farmington, Utah, the son of Franklin D. Richards, yeah, I mentioned that, and Nancy Longstroth. Richards' father was an apostle of the LDS Church and a member of the Quorum of the 12 Apostles. Franklin D. Richards also served as president of the Quorum of the 12 from 1898 to 1899. Very short stint, yeah. After George Richards' death, one of his sons, LeGrand, that's what I thought it was his son, became a member of the Quorum of the 12 Apostles of the LDS Church, thus making the Richards family only the third Latter-day Saint family in history with 3 consecutive generations with members in the Quorum. Yeah, it's a special thing. The others being the succession of George A. Smith, John Henry Smith, and George Albert Smith, and Amasa M. Lyman, Francis M. Lyman, and Richard R. Lyman, which was a little bit of a sadder story. Since of the 3 of the Lymans that were apostles, only one of them was not excommunicated. Gosh. George A. Smith, George Henry Smith, John Henry Smith, and George Albert Smith. And then this was Franklin D. Richards, George F. Richards, and LeGrand Richards. Hang on, let me see how they were related to Willard Richards. Because I thought they were. But I guess if they were, they would have been 4 generations, yeah? I'm going to do his father. Franklin D. Richards' relation to Willard Richards. Yeah. Oh, he was the nephew of Apostle Willard Richards. Okay. So Franklin D. Richards was Willard Richards' nephew. And see, that's why I thought that they were father and son, because it was the same generation. But, my bad. Anyways, that was really interesting. Okay, Richards was baptized by Oliver L. Robinson, who would later become his father-in-law. Oh, okay, because he married his daughter. Okay, I got it. For some reason, I was thinking that he was, like, married to his daughter, but that would be his son-in-law. Okay, I got it. In 1882, Richards married Alice A. Robinson. George and Alice had 15 children. One of the halls and heritage halls at Brigham Young University is named for Alice. I didn't know that. I wonder why. Because there has to be a reason. Like was she well known as, like, prominent person? That's interesting. I mean, besides being the wife of her husband. You know what I mean? She must have been well known of her own volition, Education. Richards received a degree in English from the University of Deseret, later the University of Utah. He also studied mathematics there. Cool. I'm sorry, I studied mathematics, if you couldn't tell. Okay, employment and politics. Richards worked for the Utah Central Railway as a clerk from 1881 to 1882. From 1885 to 1888, Richards lived on a farm fielding in Box Elder County, Utah. In 1888, he moved to Tualatin, Utah, where he served on the school board and on the irrigation board, as well as directing the Tooele City Water Company. See, that's interesting. Why didn't he mention that? Richards engaged in farming and the lumber business in Tooele. Initially in Tooele, Richards and his family lived and worked on the ranch of his uncle. In 1896, he bought his own house and farmland in Tooele. From 1899 to 1900, Richards served as a member of the Utah House of Representatives from Tooele County. That's also interesting. Come on. From which party? That would be interesting to me. Was he a Democrat or Republican, or what was the other one? The People's Party? Yeah? I don't know. It doesn't say. LDS Church Service. Early church callings. Richards was ordained an elder in the LDS Church at age 15. That was quite common back then. There's no exact age restriction on becoming an elder. He received the endowment shortly after this. Among various early callings he held were those of home missionary, similar to what would be called as a stake missionary and eventually a ward missionary, and president of the Ward Young Men's Mutual Improvement Association's YMMIA. In 1890, Richards became second counselor in the presidency of the Tooele, Utah stake. Really? 1890? So how old was he? 31? Is that right? No. 29. Go back a year. Yeah? 29. In 1893, so at age 22, Richards was ordained a patriarch by Francis M. Lyman. That's really unusual. At age 32, Richards is one of the youngest men to have ever held this office in the church. Yeah, that's interesting. Calling as an apostle. In 1905, 2 members of the Quorum of the 12 Apostles resigned after an argument over LDS church doctrine and policy. Yes, I did know this. John W. Taylor and Matthias F. Cowley, yeah. They were good friends and they disagreed on the manifesto against plural marriage, yeah. I'm sure they're going to explain that, yeah. John W. Taylor disagreed with the 1890 manifesto forbidding plural marriage. Matthias F. Cowley felt that it should apply only to the territory of the United States. In February of the next year, Apostle Mariner W. Merrill died, and this left 3 vacancies in the quorum. On April 8, 1906, at the LDS Church's General Conference, Richards was called to be an apostle by Church President Joseph F. Smith. He was ordained and set apart the following day ahead of Orson F. Whitney and David O. McKay. So he was called at the exact same time as David O. McKay. Interesting. But I think he was a bit older. That's why he was ordained first. Yeah, so what they did at the time, and what they usually still do, although there has been one exception that I am aware of, is that if several people are called at the same time to fill callings in the Quorum of the 12, then they will consider the oldest person to be the senior apostle. The only exception that I know of is D.L.G. Renlund, who was actually younger than Ronald A. Rasband, but he was ordained before him. Anyways, not important, but it's and I don't think it's a fast rule, but as a rule of thumb, I would say that's what they do. Early assignments in the 12. See, that's interesting to me. Richards was appointed to the general boards of the YMMIA and the religion classes shortly after his call to the 12. He also served as an advisor to the primary general board beginning in 1909, initially as one of the first 2 priesthood advisors to the board, along with Hiram M. Smith. During his early days in the 12, Richards went on several tours of missions in the United States, as well as visiting many state conferences. See, that's interesting. They could have talked about his tour of the different missions. They could have talked about being an advisor on the primary general board. You could have talked about him being a patriarch. Like, that's a big deal. And very surprising, yeah? Mission president. In 1916, Richards was made the president of the church's European mission. Yeah, they did mention that. In this position, he was directly over missionary work in Great Britain, as well as having a supervisory role over the mission presidents of the European continent. Among the mission presidents in mainland Europe was Richard's son, Legrand. Oh, wasn't he? Yeah, he was in Holland, yeah, who was president of the Netherlands mission. There you go. George F. Richards Jr. and his wife Edith accompanied George F. Richards while he served as mission president. See, I didn't even know he had a junior. Richards succeeded Hiram M. Smith as president of the European mission. Who succeeded Rutger Clausen and blah, blah, blah. Okay, temple president. From 1921 until 1938, Richards was president of the Salt Lake Temple, which they definitely talked about almost too much in the article. In this capacity, he assisted with the changing of the temple ordinances to conform with the church's good neighbor policy. What does that mean? The Good Neighbor policy is the 1927 reform of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints that removed any suggestion in church literature, sermons, and ordinances that its members should seek vengeance on U.S. citizens or governments, particularly for the assassinations of its founder. Oh my gosh. I didn't know that was a part of the church. Oh my gosh. Like, it's very rare that I learn something really new. Like, okay, there you go. Oh my gosh. Wow. That they actually said that the members should seek vengeance for the assassination of Joseph Smith. It's like, whoa, 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 whoa. I'm pretty sure that wasn't originally in the temple ordinances, since Joseph Smith received those temple ordinances, like, before he was assassinated, and they did shorten them quite a bit, but like, honestly, having put in there, like, you should seek vengeance for the assassination of Joseph Smith, it's like, whoa, 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 whoa. No, 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 we don't do that. We are a church here, not an army. Gosh. During his time as temple president, the modern methods and uses of the temple were largely instituted. Baptisms for health and ordinations of the sick were discontinued in the temple. Baptisms for health and endowment sessions starting at night were begun. Baptisms for health. Have you ever heard of that? I didn't know they did that. Baptisms for health. You'd be like, I'm really sick. Can I be baptized? Like, that's a weird thing to do. I guess it's a thing. It was a thing. No longer a thing. Weird. Acting presiding patriarch, which I find very interesting. In 1937, Richards was asked by church president Heber J. Grant to assume the duties that would normally be carried about by the church's presiding patriarch. Richards accepted and served in this capacity until 1942, when Grant called Joseph Fielding Smith, son of Hiram M. Smith, not son of Joseph F. Smith. Please don't get him confused with the president of the church. It is very confusing because they have the same name. Yes. Okay. To be the church's presiding patriarch. I did know that. Richards was called, sustained, and set apart as the acting presiding patriarch to the LDS Church because he was not a direct descendant of the first Latter-day Saint patriarch Joseph Smith Sr. During his tenure as acting presiding patriarch, Richards remained a member of the Quorum of the 12 Apostles and retained his seniority within that body. Yeah. Because they wanted somebody who was a direct, line descendant, bloodline descendant. But there weren't that many, is the problem. So you mostly went through the line of Hiram Smith, yeah, because Joseph Smith Jr.'s children were not part of the church, and his children weren't anymore anyway, since Emma branched off. And so it was mostly through Hiram Smith. William Smith wasn't really part of the church. Don Carlos Smith died too young. I don't think he had too many kids. And who else was there? Alvin didn't have any children, and I'm missing somebody. Samuel. I don't know about his children or if he had children or anything. I don't know about him well enough to know. But most of them through Hiram Smith's children, who was also one of the patriarchs. So that did work. But then it was like, okay, we had John Smith, and then was Hiram Smith's son. And then they had Hiram G. Smith at one point. And anyways, there's a bunch of them. I could go through them at some point. But, yeah. George F. Richards was not a direct descendant. And so I think it's interesting that they chose him. I guess it was because he was a patriarch before he was called as an apostle. So they chose him to be acting presiding patriarch, even though he wasn't a direct descendant. It's very unusual. Also, Joseph Fielding Smith, the patriarch, not the president of the church, he was only there for 3 years, I think, before they chose someone else. Anyways, and that is a story for another day. There's a lot of gossip in that one. Maybe I'll do a video on him, because it's actually really interesting, really interesting. I find him a fascinating character. The patriarch, Joseph Fielding Smith, not the president of the church. I'm going to keep saying that because they have the same name. It's confusing. Anyways, president of the 12. With the death of LDS Church President Heber J. Grant, Richards became the second most senior apostle in the church, and thus the president of the Quorum of the 12 on May 21st, 1945, a position which he held until his death. He is the only person in the church's history to have been both the presiding patriarch and the president of the Quorum of the 12. I do believe that. Yeah? Because the presiding patriarch was so flippin' unusual, especially for an apostle. I think he was the only one that was the presiding patriarch. Anyway, death. Richards died in Salt Lake City of coronary thrombosis. Isn't that a thrombosis? Isn't that a blood clot? Coronary thrombosis, wouldn't that just be a heart attack? I'm just asking. I'm not a doctor, so... Anyways, he was buried at Salt Lake City Cemetery After Richard's death, Delbert L. Stapley was called in the October General Conference of that year to fill the vacancy, and David O. McKay became president of the quorum, and shortly thereafter president of the church, Phrenology? What the flip? I think that's weird. Like, why is this even linked? I don't get it, because they didn't mention phrenology, so I don't know. I'm pretty sure phrenology, it's like the mapping of the head, like the bumps on your head. So they didn't even mention that in the article, so why is this linked? I don't understand. Anyways, the good neighbor policy is so funny. It's so funny to me. Like, that was something that took me off guard. I mean, I thought I knew a lot about church history, and I didn't know about that. Crazy. That's crazy. Interesting that he studied English and math. Like, that's not usually a combination you see, and it reminds me of myself because I studied English and German. I don't know. I just think it's really funny. And people used to always tell me that, studying math, which is a very technical field, as well as like language of any kind, is very unusual, because usually those are from two completely parts of the brain that, usually if you're really good at one, you're not good at the other, vice versa. But so I've been picked on a little bit because, not picked on, but like it's been mentioned before that it's unusual to study both of those things, but his is even less usual, I think. I mean, English, because if you're learning your native language, then it's more about literature and writing well. And if you also are mathematical, like, that's very unusual. Being a good writer and a good, like, quantitative person is very unusual. Like, for me, it was foreign languages, which I found interesting, and it's a little bit different than studying your native language, which is, more complicated. Anyways, I found that really interesting, and I think that I got more from the Wikipedia article than the original article. I feel like the author, Bryant S. Hinckley, was just a little bit... I feel like he didn't know what to say about this guy, and I feel bad because there's so many interesting things. Like he didn't... I don't feel like he was really fair to George F. Richards, as if he were saying, this guy's kind of boring. It's because he's so calm. He doesn't get worked up about anything. He's not super passionate. Like, dude, he's just boring. And it's like, no, he's not. Dude, he was a patriarch at the age of 32, and then he was called into the Quorum of 12. How many people can say that? Nobody. Like, he was very unusual. He just did things in his own quiet way, that's all. And yeah, he had 13 children, and he seemed to love his family. But and yes, one of his sons became a member of the Quorum of the 12, as well as his father was. And he himself was. And it's just, that's all really interesting. Don't tell me this dude's not interesting, Bryant S. Hinckley. Kick your butt, jeesh. That's just annoying. Anyways, I found that really interesting. Really interesting. And I admire this person a lot, and I hope that other people will recognize in him kind of a greatness, a quiet greatness, which I very much appreciate. So kind of a subtle giant, if you will. Anyways, I hope you enjoyed that as much as I did. And if you did, please give the video a like and subscribe to the channel, and I hope to see you in the next video.